What's up, boys and girls? How you all doing? Welcome back to our channel. I'm always I'm your homeboy, the Rhino. Today we got a special guest, one of my close and dear friends from way back when I was in the third grade. When yeah, so we got my homeboy Michael Serio. How you doing, brother?
Hey, what's up, Neuron? It has been that long, hasn't it, man? It feels
Yeah,
like it feels longer, but I guess it hasn't been, I don't know, 20 something years, over 20 years. That's 2 decades. That's a long time, man. But it
yeah,
has been
it's
a
crazy.
um a pleasure. So thanks
Yeah.
so much for having me.
So yeah, today we're gonna talk about how engineering. So before I say that, let me give you a little bit of background on myself and Michael. I'm a mechanical engineer. I got my undergrad at Syracuse University. Went and now currently getting my MBA from Santa Clara. Michael has a undergrad in geology and something else, right? I feel like I'm missing something from your undergrad.
Geology and paleontology. Yeah.
Paleontology, that was it. And now you're at over in Montana,
Yep.
getting your master's in paleo, correct?
Yep. That's right.
Cool. So today, with that being said, today we're going to talk about how science affects engineering and engineering affects science, kind of that circle. And I felt that who else better than a paleontologist being on the show, along with an engineer.
Heck yeah, man. Excited to kind of dive in. That sounds awesome.
So I remember when we were last talking, before you left for Montana, but we at that ramen place. By the way, I went back there, super good. I'm probably gonna do a review on my own channels about that. But anyways, yeah. So with that being said, why did you get into paleontology?
I actually have a picture that kind of describes things a little better. You can see. Let me see. That's me being held by my dad, and that is, I think, the Academy of Science in San Francisco. They had a life-size T-Rex exhibit at the time, but I was obsessed as a kid with dinosaurs. Absolutely obsessed. Everything dinosaurs. There was actually, it wasn't Jurassic Park that got me in, contrary to what got a lot of people into the science, which is totally fine. But I think it was a PBS special called Paleo World. I don't know if you remember that from
Oh
like
yeah, I
back in
remember
the
that way back
yeah,
when.
yeah. And I think that was one of my first words was Paleo World. There's no D. It was Paleo World. It was one of the first words I ever said.
Yeah,
So I was obsessed from a very young age. Yeah, but
yeah,
it kind of extends out into geology pretty soon. Um, Even in like elementary school, like I was still really into paleontology and dinosaurs, but also geology was starting to really get going. You remember our elementary school where we used to go? There was a running track,
yeah, I remember that.
and I would get in trouble for prying rocks off of the track and saving them. I think I still have it somewhere. I have a bucket full of rocks that I stole from the school. So I've been very much ingrained in both for a very long time.
Nice. Yeah, I remember. For me, the reason I became a mechanical engineer, or an engineer that ended up becoming a mechanical engineer, was number one. For like you, had a very curious mind growing up. Like I always tried to figure out why things work the way they work. From a very young age, that's what the stories from my parents told me growing up. Every time my mom would put me in the playpen, I would escape and figure out a way to be around my mom than being the playpen. And then yeah, so similar to you, and when we took, remember, I don't know if you remember this, but I know at least my class took a field trip to the San Jose Tech Museum.
Oh yeah, that was huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, with that being said, I kind of saw this robotic hand picking up something like a brick or something and moving it somewhere else, and like you get to control it from like this, like I want to say like those old school copter remotes, wireless
Mhm.
remotes.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's kind of like what, at least the first official time that I could think of, that set me towards the track of mechanical engineering. And
That's
then
awesome.
yeah, there's actually two more events I can remember. Is that number two was that Mythbusters. So
Oh,
yeah. So by the way, for everyone watching, listening, Michael and I grew up. Were born before Mythbusters started, way back when, and we basically grew up. At least I grew up with Mythbusters, watching the every episode at least twice, and like I fell in love with that show.
that show is amazing. And
Yeah,
like you say, like we grew up with it, and it was such an amazing show that I've come to realize even Jamie
Adam.
and Adam, how could I forget Adam?
Yeah,
Jamie and Adam, they didn't even realize how big of a show it would be, especially for the scientific component of it. They were just out to do wacky experiments and play
yeah,
around with weird myths, but it ended up being such a good show for displaying the scientific method, how to make an experiment, how to create a replicating system that's going to, no matter what, do the thing you want to do, and all of the realities of it's not going to be that easy. You know, there's going to be, it was just such a great example of that
yeah,
was on TV for everybody, man. Yeah, I love it.
yeah. I think that show ended up generating a lot of scientists or future scientists and engineers to like both regardless of male, female, non-binary, insert whatever gender here, pronouns. I don't know what else to say here. But it set up a lot of kids who grew up because of Mythbusters towards engineering and the sciences. And the main reason I say that is because one of the hosts, Grant Imahara, he died way too young. He was an electrical engineer out of USC.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and he did I won't say all, but at least a lot of the robotic stuff from it. And that's like, hey, that's cool. and and it's like,
Yeah,
yeah,
you got to start up battle bots, right?
yeah, that's also
I'm like,
when BattleBots became a thing, and it was like, oh my god. And then like during the same time when I saw the episode of Grant Imahara doing, I think one of the first episodes of with the robotics, Iron Man 1 came out back in 2008, 2009.
oh wow, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was a lot of things just kind of came together for you there. Oh, that's
Yeah.
great.
So I fell in love with engineering in the third grade, and I knew that's what I wanted to do. And then kind of like it narrowed down from being a broad spectrum of engineering towards mechanical engineering, towards robotics, and like towards now tech. I'm just like, oh my god, I love this. This is so cool.
Awesome. Oh, that's great.
Yeah,
That's fantastic. Yeah.
yeah. Unfortunately, like I was like, at least for me, Grant Mahara was a big hero for me because he actually was, like I said, like he was one of the events that set me on a track towards engineering, and I took his death very hard. Like I started crying, like yeah. So that's a different conversation. But yeah,
Mhm.
so yeah, kind of moving from off of that of how we ended up into engineering and the sciences. I guess we can kind of go off into why or how one affects the other.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
That's great. And is absolutely essential. I feel like engineering as a discipline is essentially just an applied science at that
yeah,
point. You're just
I'm in the same boat.
taking all the tools from a number of different fields and putting them all together. I think engineering works in the kind of crossroads between physics, geology,
Biology,
and
chemistry.
yeah, biology, chemistry, kind of all of those kind of intermixing together, um, you know, and there's actually a few courses that were available that I think I took at NAU about applied geology essentially, and how you can use geology for engineering applications, and how that is really huge, especially if you're doing anything involving the earth or the ground at all. There's going to be a geological aspect to it that's going to be important to pay attention to.
Yeah, exactly. I know that mainly because I work for a construction company in the Bay Area. So we have to do a lot of ground testing and all that fun stuff.
Yeah, what does that involve? Because I know the soils out there can be kind of iffy. in the Bay.
Yeah.
There's, for that reason, San Francisco doesn't have a lot of high rises. There's only one spot where you can get good high rise buildings in San Francisco, and the rest it's unstable. So how does that work?
So at least from like a mechanical engineering perspective, we have to separate into class 1, class 2, and class 3 soil.
Mhm.
And I forgot which way it goes, but I think class 1 soil is the worst. Let me just, sorry, I'm just Googling this right now. I'm sorry, class
Yeah.
3 is the worst.
Okay.
So class 3 is the worst one. And it's basically because of various contaminants, like it was a gas station for X amount of years, or it was something that was, lack of a better word, a harmful to the soil industry that affected the soil negatively. And unfortunately, for class 1 soil, you can kind of reuse it in the sense to kind of repurpose it and like put in different spots. Class 2, it's less so. Class 3, you have to go and basically ship it out to a train, like a set of trains, specialized trains, and send that to like Montana, Utah, Colorado, like someplace that's like.
That's for treatment, or do they just take that contaminated soil and just kind of dump it in a hole?
I think it just dump it in a hole and kind of like get rid of it, like nuclear waste kind of
Yeah,
thing.
yep. You do something like in Nevada where they take the nuclear waste and they just ferry it into a mountain essentially, and they just store it in the mountain. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow, I didn't know that. I've worked on the hydrogeology side, which I guess is where an area where geology and engineering intersect very closely. I worked for about a year out of San Rafael in the Bay Area with a hydrogeology firm, and did a lot of water well maintenance and assessment. And there is a lot that can be done in terms of working with contaminated soils, contaminated water tables as well, to kind of keep wells from pulling up water. And I know that they do a lot with sucking out contaminated water, treating it or sucking it out and moving it somewhere else. You can blend water together to get a different concentration. But that's the first I've ever heard of dealing with the soil itself. I've never thought about that. I just feel like it just sits there. You don't have to worry about it. But I guess if you've got, like, what kind of contaminants levels do you have in a soil where you can't use it anymore?
So like it'll be like class 3, and basically it's something like, at least according to the government, since they're a reliable source. So basically, if it's like under, was it 23% contaminations per, I think per ppm or whatever the right verbiage is, yeah, so something like that. It's like it's class 1 or class 2. 21% apparently is class 3, and then there's like,
okay.
So there's apparently like 1 to 8 levels. The worse it gets, the higher the number, the worse it gets.
It gets to level 8, and you don't deal with anything past 3.
As far as I know, I up until like right now, I only realized thought there were 3 levels. I didn't realize there were more than 3.
Wow. All the way up to 8. Is 8 just pure uranium?
I think so.
It's just pure, yeah.
I think so. It's like, and like according to this doc that from USADA for soils, class 1 is soils have slight limitation that restrict their use. Class 2 have moderate limitations that could reduce choice of plants or required moderate conservation practices. 3 is severe. 4 is very severe. And then 5 has little or no hazardous corrosions. 6 is severe limitations on corrosions, and like it keeps going off, and like,
oh yeah,
so it's kind of like, so something like a gas station may have higher contaminants because of the oil getting to the soil and then thus wrecking the soil around it. I guess to an extent, even like septic tanks could have something like that too. If you live in like a place where septic tanks and like propane would stuff like that would can easily get absorbed by the soil, could destroy the soil.
Yeah. Okay. a big one on the water quality side that I didn't know about until I started my job are things called, I think, PFCs, perfluorinated compounds.
Right.
Things like or those perfluorinated compounds, and then there's another set that I can't remember at the moment. Let me see. It's TCE, trichloroethylene, and TCP, which is trichloropropane. And I didn't know anything about those compounds, and they're very recently being considered as dangerous compounds you don't want in your drinking water. And interesting, because those leak into the water through, I think TCE and PCE come in at laundromats of all places. Laundromats have the chemicals that they use, and there's kind of, so you'll have just a localized area around what could have been or was a laundromat that is just soaking into the water. That can be bad news. And then there's, I think it's also in flame retardants foams, like that are used on Air Force bases. I can't remember exactly what compound it is exactly, but those also leach into the soil. And we actually did a couple surveys in Air Force bases to kind of look at the contaminants and kind of options that they had for remediating and getting rid of it. So
also like a big thing is asbestos.
Oh, interesting. Especially in the Bay Area. Yeah, that's right. I actually have a rock that I found in the Bay Area. It's a metamorphic grade crystal that is associated with asbestos. It's actually an asbestos grade mineral, and it's a very much associated with serpentinite and serpentine type minerals. You're going to have similar minerals along that level of metamorphic rocks. You're going to get a lot of asbestos as well. So I didn't think about that. Is that's just in the ground where you're trying to do work?
Yeah, pretty much, because asbestos, as a lot of people know, is very toxic and cause various other issues like cancer and very nasty things that affect the human body.
You know exactly how it messes people up.
Apparently, if you inhale asbestos, like the asbestos proofing around like water, so asbestos was, I think, used in like the 50s, 60s, 70s, maybe up to like 80s. Around like, it's basically to like cover like heating, cooling pipes, basically to like as a something to protect the house, like basically used for insulation. That's the word I was looking for. And then if you inhale it, it's like inhaling glasses, like pieces of glass shard into your lungs.
Yeah, quite literally. They're microscopic little glass fibers that get into your lungs, and they get stuck in the alveoli in your lungs, and it just ends up creating all kinds of problems.
Very nasty stuff.
Do you have to deal with buildings that have asbestos, or you're dealing with asbestos minerals that are in the ground?
Both. Potentially both, because because like a lot of buildings, especially from I think the 50s, 60s, 70s time, had or used several layers of asbestos layering insulation for various things. And it's like, well, we have to be like that. Well, that would drive up the cost for cleanup to the point where it might be very dangerous for test the soil, just to make sure it doesn't affect the soil. If that affects the soil, then the owner has to pay out like thousands upon thousands of dollars more to clean that up, and it could potentially delay a project in construction.
Wow.
So it's just
Very, very wild stuff. Oh man. So definitely a big major factor that you probably have to navigate a lot in your job. With the geology of the Bay Area specifically, how do you have to plan around earthquakes? Because with the San Andreas fault line right there, that's definitely something that has some consideration.
So actually I can speak to both the geology side and the engineering side. For the FE exam, which is the fundamentals of engineering exam, that if you want to get licensed as an engineer, specifically in mechanical, civil, electrical, and like other degrees like that, in at least for mechanical, I think I'm assuming electrical, not electrical, but civil is in the same place as us, where you have, if you take the test here in California, you have to take,
Right.
there's an extra chapter explicitly for earthquakes.
Wow, just
Yeah.
for
Just for as far as I know, just California, possibly Oregon, Washington too. But like, I know explicitly for California people who are trying to get licensed in California, it's like you have to understand the motion of an earthquake, the fact that we can't predict an earthquake correctly. I don't want to say, I don't know what other verbiage to say here, but it's kind of like we have to plan for that. We have to put in shock absorbers and make sure that the building can sit on the shock absorbers so that the build, as the earth sway, as the tectonic plates sway, the building sways with it, so that it doesn't affect the building as much.
interesting. So you're not trying to create a building that is going to withstand the shaking. You want something that's going to be actually moving with the wave.
Yeah.
Whoa. Okay.
It's like
Yeah.
and I could be absolutely wrong about this, but that's just from how I understand construction here in the Bay Area. And like you said, earthquakes, the San Andreas Fault is like what, 5 minutes from Cupertino or the Bay Area.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It runs all the way up. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's kind of like it's hard to predict. So yeah, that's kind of my interpretation of how it is in construction.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then and then for like, it also kind of like, if with the swaying of the buildings, it kind of reduces the impact and the strain on the building. So you don't want to have glass windows breaking and possibly hurting someone else on the ground, or it would basically have less impact overall than just saying, here, just stick it into the ground, good luck.
Yeah. Wishing for the best. Oh man.
Yeah.
Do you know the limits on how tall you can build? Like how high can buildings be?
It depends on the county and the state. Various buildings can go up to certain heights. Like if you look at New York City, for example, you would have multiple skyscrapers there versus something like San Francisco, where you have like one, maybe two, maybe three skyscrapers.
They're really qualified.
Yeah.
But like for those buildings like Salesforce Tower, it's huge, it's massive.
Yeah.
And so that has to be to code. They're not going to build it. It's brand new, just about built within the last few years.
Yeah.
The engineering required to make sure that something like that is going to sway in an earthquake and isn't going to topple in on itself is mind-boggling. That's something. That's props to the engineers on that one.
Yeah, and it's also like, so for those of you who haven't been to New York City in the last so many years, you go to New York City, you take a boat ride, you can actually see skyscrapers, then it goes down to like normal like 4 or 5 story buildings, and then you get skyscrapers again. So it's kind of like a weird like tower building. I don't know what the exact verbiage is, but it's like kind of like a step ladder in a sense. And the reasons for that is actually a geological reason too. So mainly because in order to have a taller building, you need good shit to be in the ground. So that's why you have something like,
they don't have the foundation.
The foundation sucks in the center here of New York City.
Yeah,
that's
center
why you see like, I think
makes a lot of sense.
I think so, yeah. And then that's why you see like something like the Burj Khalifa. By the way, you can see that video on my Instagram and Facebook and YouTube on my personal channel, Firehawk Archer 1. Yes, shameless plug here.
Yeah, gotta get it in.
That's actually currently the tallest building in the world. And like here in the US, the most common outside the major cities, the most common height for a building is like 5, maybe 6 stories. With the exception of like New York City and like other major cities where it's like 12, 13 stories, 15 stories, whatever. Everything in Dubai is like everything is above 4 feet or 4 stories. And the Burj Khalifa is, I think, like 20 something odd stories. And because of the height, you have to expand
more than that. That building is massive. That building is huge.
Let me actually.
It's got to have like a couple hundred floors, right?
I think so. I might be wrong here. Um, I'm actually Googling this right now. Sorry.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah. So yeah, you're right. It's actually over 100 stories. Yeah.
Yeah, that building's something else. They had to build new elevators for that one, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And then to make matters more interesting is that I just Googled how many floors in the Burj Khalifa. It stands at over 828 meters, which is 2,716.5 feet, and more than 160 stories, which
And
is
that is still the biggest in the world, right?
currently. I heard rumors that Saudi Arabia might be he's building one to surpass the Burj Khalifa, and other countries are
Yeah,
trying to push the limit.
but
But
it's
it's like,
currently
yeah.
yes, man. Wow.
Yeah, so I was actually talking to my guide since I hired a guide to take me into the building. I asked him
Hmm.
point blankly, since the observation deck I think is on the 140 something odd floor, 46th floor or something. I asked him, my guide's like, hey, just out of curiosity, what happens if there's like a fire or something like catastrophic, like a fire on like the 100th floor? Like, what do you do? And he said, good luck.
Oh man.
I'm just like, and no, I'm like, so I'm 5'10". I'm definitely on the taller side of the scale. I'm looking down at the ground. It's like, yeah, this is not gonna be a fun landing.
No, that's what do you do? Do you keep parachutes in your building and just kind of that's
Luck.
crazy. Yeah. Oh gosh.
Because it was like, as a construction guy, you kind of like you think of the worst case scenarios, general for like just out of curiosity. I'm just like,
Hmm.
if there's no parachutes in like every floor, at least like 10 or 15 parachutes, you're gonna be dead.
Even that though, like if you don't know how to use a parachute,
Yeah.
that's gonna be chaos. You can't just give people parachutes and expect that to work out.
Yeah.
That's wild. I can't believe that they wouldn't have
I
a
don't know.
more
They
contingency, but I don't know.
they
Maybe they've
could
got like
have
really
one,
good
but as far as I know, they don't have one. Yeah.
more power to them, I guess. Oh man.
Yeah. So I obviously with that got down the building as quickly as possible because I didn't want to be stuck up there. Yeah.
Shoot. Oh man. Gosh.
Yeah. So yeah, it's a very hard thing to do because I know there's an upper limit for buildings on because how high a building can be built. Because when I was working at the NVIDIA project over the last couple of years, we had to and that's like I think within 10 or so miles of the San Jose airport.
Okay.
And we have to let the airport know, saying, hey, we got a building here. We can't go past a certain height because of plane takeoffs. The last thing you need is the plane wheel clipping something and that plane going head first into the building. That'll be very bad.
It's bad for PR and it's bad for a lot of people. Yeah.
It's bad on all fronts. So it's kind of like I know if you are I think within 24, 25 miles, you have to let the airport know, and you cannot go past a certain height, otherwise we'll interfere with airplanes taking off. I'm just like,
yeah.
Well, shit. That's not fun.
Interesting. So you have airplane limitations as well.
Yeah, so that's why you usually have like buildings as far away as possible from like massive buildings where you would have I know every country and every county in the US is different, every state is different. So it really depends on the state codes. And Sacramento, which is the state capital for California, has I think one of the toughest codes in the country, if not the toughest. So.
Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know Sacramento would be. Why
Sacramento,
is that? Why are they?
Mainly because it like California at least is trying to be the first green state in the U.S. Where it's like, but basically what Germany is doing with their electrical system is what California is trying to do.
Oh, okay.
So it's kind of like just produce a lot of electricity, like because there's an abundance of power coming from California. That's what California is trying to do. And it's like, I know, like, for example, the green emissions project where it's like you have to limit the number of how much carbon you release from cars. That was actually
Yeah.
that program was starting in California.
Hmm.
So it's
Awesome.
kind of so it's trying to make the planet green by lowering down problems that could potentially
Yeah,
damage it.
kind of setting the standard there. Yeah, I like that. I like the sound of it. I mean, we kind of need it after this summer. It's kind of hard to refute that something's not going on because I think half the U.S. is on fire right now.
Something like that.
Just about, yeah.
Yeah. So it's just yeah, and plus like if I know at least for PG&E in California, there PG&E has a basically has a monopoly on California's plant power grid, and
Mm-hmm. We got a
because
strangle.
yeah, stranglehold will be a better better word. Um, but anyways, it's like what happened 2020 with the fires. It was
Mm-hmm.
PG&E's fault for not like doing what they're doing, and then Paradise and a bunch of other cities in California got lit up like a firework, and it's it was a shit show for PG&E. And excuse me, so it's so a lot of
Not bad.
people,
I mean, they still haven't lived that down because I think they still aren't really.
yeah,
They're
exactly,
not going. They're not updating the infrastructure. They're not. They're
exactly,
not fixing these old lines, which really should be buried in the first place. I think that's the new standard, right? Is
yeah,
buried power line. I
yeah,
think that's a lot safer as opposed to having hanging lines.
yeah,
But instead, their solution is to do rolling blackouts
yeah,
when it's so instead of taking the responsibility on themselves to actually do anything, they're taking it and they're putting it on the consumers who give them money in the first place. Yeah, it's pretty crappy to say the least. Yeah.
yeah. So it's just like I think I hope that PG&E gets like separated into various other companies. That way, it's like
Just put it up. Oh, that's the solution that you think might kind of help
I
with
think
things?
I think it could because like for example, I said has a stranglehold on California, and I know certain pockets, certain cities have their own power grid. Like Santa
Right.
Clara, the city of Santa Clara has it doesn't use PG&E. They use a company called SVP, Silicon Valley Power.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's very
Yeah,
interesting. Okay.
and I know
Huh.
I think there's other counties and other cities within California that are similar to Santa Clara, where it's like we're not going to use PG&E. We're going to use this company instead. So
I really feel strongly that it's just a better way of getting better service. You know, it's the same thing that I hear with Sonic. Sonic, I think, is also a California local
yeah,
internet provider, internet company, and I only really hear good things. I don't know if it's like the factor of like competition requiring that, or the fact that they're a smaller company, so they're actually in the community that they're serving. I don't
yeah,
know what factors lead in there, but I know that the result is that you get companies that do a lot more. They do a lot more for people.
yeah,
They do a lot more for the consumers,
exactly.
which
I think again, this is just my own opinion right now. What I'm about to say. I think, and I'm not gonna. I can't speak for anybody else, but I think competition proves excellence among people and companies. Again, that's just my own opinion. If you want to follow me in that, feel free. If you don't want to, feel free. But again,
yeah, yeah,
I feel like all companies, regardless if it's a Microsoft or an Apple or a Google or Sonic or who's a smaller company, it's like all these companies are being grade A assholes or jackasses, whatever word you want to use. We want to do it better than this company. That's just my own opinion.
and I think that's kind of, I don't know, it's how things on paper are supposed to work, should work. I don't know. I'm understanding that we're kind of going off the rails into economics now,
Yeah.
but I'm okay with it. It doesn't seem to work that way anymore.
Yeah.
I think a lot about uh, uh, Teddy Roosevelt and his presidency and the work that he had to do to bust up these massive monopolies. And I think that we're kind of in the second coming of that in a big way. That
Right.
these are companies that are so big. Google split itself into alphabet, but really it has its fingers in so many areas.
Right.
It's kind of scary how ubiquitous it is. It's everywhere.
Literally. And then some can argue with that with Amazon because they're also in, and they have their fingers in many pots as well.
Mhm. And that's the it's the only thing that's concerning about it is that it feels different than our parents' generation. For example, my parents worked at HP, Hewlett Packard, and
Right.
they were tech giants. It was the big tech company for a while until Apple came along, and Apple kind of, they had competition, and then Apple kind of ended up winning there. And HP is kind of fallen into ruin a little bit.
Right.
And I don't really, it's hard to envision a future where that kind of a thing happens with a Google or an Amazon, because they're so powerful. They're just buying up competitors. They're stopping this healthy market that's supposed to happen. They're kind of putting a stop on any healthy competition that could come about. And that is concerning, to say the least. Yeah, that concerns me sometimes.
Agreed.
I
Same
don't know.
here. It feels like, it kind of feels like either you join us or you're against us, kind of a thing.
Mhm. In a way, yeah. Yeah. Oh man. Fun stuff. Fun stuff
Yeah.
though.
So yeah. So yeah, moving from that, I guess you can kind of say the reason I kind of brought up economics was because economics also helps fund science and engineering, because without money, you can't really solve issues that we need to solve. Like you won't have a certain part that requires $500,000 to build for your hydraulic plant, that you can't build it without money. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But yeah,
Yep. It is, it is important, and it's there's so much talk these days about kind of the government's role in things, where the one side of the country has a very government hands-off approach,
yeah,
and another has a very government hands-on kind of thing. It's just interesting though, because really I think the argument is about not whether the government is involved or not. It's just how the government is involved,
right,
because the government, U.S. government at least, provides money. It provides I'm forgetting the word right now, but it essentially has benefits for like the oil and gas industry, for corn. There's subsidies. That's the word I'm thinking about. Subsidies that kind of help those industries, whereas other industries and other sectors just don't get subsidies. They don't get assistance. And I think that that is an interesting inequality that doesn't get brought up enough in political debate, that the government's helping already. It's helping, but it's not, it isn't equally distributed
yeah,
for, I think there's a number of different complicated reasons behind that. But, people that I don't know. It's tricky.
right,
But I think that facing the really ever important climate issues that are coming our way, which I think is it's going to be the task of both scientists, engineers, geologists, biologists, everyone alike is going to have to come together to solve this issue, which I think is a huge call to action for our generation, for newer generations. I think especially props to a lot of the kids in the younger generation coming up. They're very aware of what's going on and what's at stake right now. We all have a lot to lose, but I think it's, especially the younger generations, are very much aware that there is a lot on the table right now. And so, yeah, in lines with the economics that we've been talking about, where do you think we can start to get some of the money to help fund some of these green initiatives for things like hydro plants or geothermal plants, which are two very tightly combined geology and engineering kind of endeavors?
so at least let me take it from an environmental cause. I know like the Hoover Dam, that's a huge hydroelectric dam out in Nevada that basically
Yeah,
powers Los Angeles and Las Vegas and like a bunch of cities around there. But
mhm.
unfortunately, because of the dam, the neighboring ecosystem got damaged heavily. So it's kind of
Right.
like it's green because we're using what nature provides us with water for water turning a turbine and generating power, but we're also destroying it. So I'm just kind of like, here we go.
It's tough. It's really tough. But being involved in hydrogeology for, or I was more than a year. I was, I think, 3 years, almost 3 years that I worked there. I came to realize that there's ideally we would like to influence nature as little as possible,
Right.
and that is an ideal. Realistically, in terms of the challenges that we're facing and just what needs to be done to keep the roof from catching on fire and falling on all of us, is
Right.
going to be a little different, especially to kind of circle back around to water in California.
You mean
Groundwater is slowly running out.
I was going to say
It is kind of,
I was going to say the lack thereof.
yeah, exactly. It's slowly running out, but the Central Valley keeps pumping nonetheless, like it's always been the same.
Right.
In order to kind of meet those needs, dams are going to have to be built. Unfortunately,
Right.
it's just a reality of that situation. Where I think Hetch Hetchy Reservoir up in Yosemite,
Right.
that supplies the water for a lot of the Bay Area. A good amount of San Franciscan water
I
comes
didn't know
from
that.
that reservoir, Hetchy, up in Yosemite. And I know that as a very prominent figure and spokesman for the outdoors. Oh gosh, I'm name's blanking right now. What's his name? John Muir. He was outspoken against that reservoir. He didn't want it to be built at all for the effects it would have on the environment. But the unfortunate reality is that without that dam, Bay Area is not going to have water, or it's going to have to scramble to figure out how to get its water sourcing elsewhere. And it's tricky. It's tricky because we need practical solutions right now that are going to help kind of help things while doing as little as damage as possible. And
Yeah.
it's tough. It's tough to kind of have to balance both of those, and I think that's really where a lot of geology and engineering especially has to come to terms with those difficult answers, has to provide an answer that's going to work, that has to be functional. But at the same time, we have to be a little bit more responsible about, not just doing the most destructive thing that's going to do what we want.
Exactly. And like kind of going off of that, it's like if you look at something like Tesla, where Tesla is obviously a whatchamacallit, a electric car company. So you have something like Tesla coming out and saying, hey, we're only going to export electric cars, and then how are we going to power the cars with the electricity? We need, so it's kind of like it's a good idea, but there's no green initiative, lack of a better word, to cover Tesla. And for that we have to burn coal. We have to cover coal and all that stuff so that we can generate power the cars. Same thing with solar panels. In order to build a solar panel, you have to use coal in order to build the solar panel. So it's kind of like,
Yep. The
hell
great
is this?
irony. It's the great irony. It's like artificial Christmas trees. People are like, oh, it's an artificial Christmas tree. You're not cutting down trees. But it's like the amount of material required to make that Christmas tree. You have like all of the leaves are probably going to be some kind of petroleum product. So that's oil. It's going to have to be shipped out. It's going to have to be processed in a factory. And so there's all these steps that like, I literally think that just having a Christmas tree that's an actual tree every year has less of a carbon footprint than a fake one. I'd actually like to see that study, if there's a study done about that. I'm not sure.
Actually.
But I wonder how many years of buying trees it takes to meet one single fake tree. It's the exact same thing. That like, oh, electric cars make us feel a little better, but there's all this infrastructure around it. And And that's what's challenging about this mess that we're in, is that we don't need a car that's going to make people feel good about themselves because they bought it and it's all electric. We need an entire systems fix, an entire system from the top to the bottom that's going to focus on this. And the frustrating thing is that it's going to have to happen, and it better happen sooner rather than later, and nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about the fact that this is a systems-wide thing that's going to have to take place. And yeah, it's
it's a system-wide failure. Because I feel like it's kind of like what you said. It's kind of seems like we're fixing the symptoms, we're not fixing the root problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of that is the nature of the beast, in that if like 10 years ago, if we had a summer that was this bad with this many wildfires, people would be freaking out. People would be really freaking out that like it would be historic, but it's just kind of because the water is boiling slowly, like I think what Al Gore said literally in his documentary. I can't remember what it was called. Do you remember his big documentary, his climate documentary?
I remember watching it, but I don't remember the.
It was the inconvenient truth. That was back in the day. He talked about the only way to boil a frog is you boil it slowly, not all at once. You slowly raise the temperature. And that's exactly what's happening. Where I remember 3 or 4 years ago, wildfires were first really getting bad in Sonoma County in the Northern California Bay Area.
Right.
And now it's slowly and slowly and slowly. You've had wildfires in Los Angeles very frequently even before then. But now you've got every year you can expect a major wildfire. What in California, in Northern and Southern California at least. And then you have all throughout the Rocky Mountains, all throughout the Sierra Mountain range as well, up into Oregon, Canada. And it's just, I don't know, you have to kind of think about these things on a trend and where things are trending. And it's just kind of...
kind of going off of that boiling frog example, it's by the time we realize, oh my God, we're dying, it's going to be too late.
Mm-hmm.
So
exactly. But I think that I think very strongly that a lot of people are starting to wake up, and I feel very strongly as well in the abilities of applied science and engineering to help tackle these issues. And so I think it's a uncertain and scary time, but I think it's also really exciting to be in the sciences, to be involved in these fields, because this like it's sky's the limit really in terms of what we can kind of come up with here.
Exactly, and it's going to be, and like you said, it's a huge call to action, starting with our generation and moving forward to the younger generations, where it's kind of like, either we fix this shit now or it's going to be way too late.
It's going to be like, completely unfixable. There is a concept in paleontology in terms of mass extinction events, where you hit what a lot of climate scientists call the tipping point, the point of no return. Right. And a lot of people think that, maybe we've gotten there already or whatnot, but it's going to be very obvious once you hit that point, because it is going to be an entire systems collapse on the ecological level, which means food webs, the entire thing is completely turned upside down. And that takes a couple thousands of years for itself to fix. So we're talking about eons. We are talking about generations of humans that probably won't survive it, that probably won't be able to, or if they will, they'll have to live with a broken planet for at least a couple thousand years until it can repair itself. And that thought made me kind of really sad. But it also made me realize that a lot of the environmental messaging about climate change has been misguided, I feel, the way in my own personal opinion anyway, where there is a lot of the messaging that focuses on our effect on the planet and how it is going to affect the animals that live on the planet. And I think that it's true, it's very true that we are having this effect, but I don't think it really makes people want to get up and do anything about it, because they're like, you know, it's happening to a panda bear, it's a polar bear in the ice caps. How does it affect me? When you make it more personal, when you say, you know, honestly, in all honesty, planet Earth will probably survive this. Animal species will probably survive this unless something goes catastrophically bad, nuclear war or whatever, something unprecedented. Like life will go on. Life finds a way, as Ian Malcolm famously said. But humans probably won't. We probably won't be fine. And so I think it's paramount. It's so important that we are as selfish as possible about this and saying, I want the human race, I want me and my family to be safe. I want my community, I want my country, I want everyone on the planet to be able to make it through this. And so being a little more selfish in the fact that we are maybe a little bit more human-centric in our approach, I think I hope would get people up on their feet wanting to do a little bit more about it.
Right. So kind of going off of that, Richard Branson and Elon Musk, and Jeff Bezos, among other multi-billionaires, have started their own NASA equivalent, but not NASA, space companies. With, like, for example, Jeff Bezos owns Blue Horizon, and I think Richard Branson owns Virgin Galactic, or whatever the right name is. And
yeah, he's had Virgin Galactic for a long time. Yeah.
And obviously SpaceX is owned by Elon Musk. So here's my kind of question for a paleontologist / geologist, as well as myself as an engineer. Could we potentially move to Mars, at least move a good chunk of the population to Mars or insert other planet here and colonize that?
I think that's their plan. That is they represent, I think, the overarching opinion of the 1%, to be honest, of the people in the world who have 1% of the world's wealth and power. They don't have their eyes on the planet anymore. They have their eyes on Mars. And so yeah, they're trying to essentially jump ship, get off the burning wreckage. But that is going to be a golden ticket that not everybody can afford. They're going to be selecting for the kinds of people that they want to select for. And you're basically going to be turning the clock back hundreds of years, thousands of years back to oligarchy. Whoever was Musk or Bezos or whoever has the money to pay for this rocket, they're going to put the people on that they want to put the people on, you know? Their kinds of people. Those are, yeah, exactly. Those are going to be the kinds of people who are going to be able to afford their golden ticket and go to Mars, which is why I think space travel is awesome. I think it is the future of mankind, but I am not in favor of jumping ship. I want to fix this planet. This is my home. I want to fix this one. I don't want to try and plan another one. I think there is a really good video on YouTube by Kurzgesagt. You know the channel?
No, I don't.
Highly recommend. I'll have to spell it out. I can send it to you here because it's a mouthful.
By the way, for those of you who are watching us on YouTube, I'll put the link to this video in the description box below.
Yeah, let me see here. I'm absolutely butchering this. Let me see if YouTube can't even come up with that. I will get that to you after we're done here. I can look that up. But they have a brilliant video about what it would take to live on Mars and to terraform Mars. And terraforming Mars, giving it an atmosphere, isn't going to happen in our lifetime. It's just not going to happen. You'd basically have to live on a bunker underground, and it just sucks. It just sounds terrible. I'd rather do what we can to keep things clean on Earth to mitigate and kind of save our planet.
Right.
So that way, space exploration isn't out of necessity. It isn't out of a desire to not die. It's out of the it's out of a need for exploration, out of a need to expand to the
Right.
next horizon, you know. Yeah.
That's interesting. Like I feel the same way. Like it's a great thing. I'm kind of sad to see the last space shuttle coming down in our generation when we started this, what, 40 plus years ago, that mission to
Yeah, yeah,
travel
yeah.
the universe.
We
Yeah,
went
so
to
it's
the
kind of,
moon and we stagnated for so long.
yeah. I mean, I feel like, I mean, there's nothing wrong with space exploration, especially at the robotic level. If not, if you don't want to send humans, because we haven't, as far as to my knowledge, we haven't explored space enough to send humans to Jupiter or to Saturn or the back three planets. So it's kind of like
Mm.
that's where I feel like in order to better understand if we can get to Io, which is one of I think Saturn's moons, or and colonize that, because that's like apparently has the same situation, or we can be colonized like or like Mars.
Yeah. Oh wow, cool.
Yeah, so it's kind of like that would obviously freak a lot of people out because it's Saturn and instead of Earth, and you only have, instead of having one moon on Earth, you have what, like 20 or 30 or however many moons there are.
That would be wild, man. That would be
Yeah,
so cool though. Like, oh gosh.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, like you say, not against that at all. That sounds amazing.
right.
It's just don't want it to be at the expense of the planet we have.
Yeah,
But super cool. Oh man, I think there's a lot of good though that I think further exploring our solar system can do, even for our situation. Like comets and asteroids. A lot of bodies, like in the asteroid belt, have a bunch of resources. They are loaded full of resources, including water. So we can
yeah,
harvest that. I think that's a theme in the sci-fi series The Expanse, where they go out and there's no fresh water left on Earth anymore. So the people go out and they harvest asteroids for the water. I think that the most unrealistic depiction, though, in The Expanse was that there would be people doing it. I think, like you say, with robots and robotics, I think it'd be possible in the not too near future to have it completely automated with an AI system harvesting water from these asteroids, harvesting
yeah,
materials.
yeah. And like to make matters interesting, I know you talked about AI. I think Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk, and like a bunch of other people have actually signed an open letter saying we don't want AI, a full-blooded AI system, out of fear of possibly a Terminator situation. For
Interesting.
those for those of you who are watching or listening, wondering what the heck is Terminator, it was a movie back in I think like late 90s, early 2000s, mid 2000s.
Or even the 80s, even. The first Terminator, I think, was in the 80s.
Yeah,
Ooh, I'm going to Google that. I'm
yeah.
going to Google that.
Where I'm gonna keep explaining. Where like basically like Arnold Schwarzenegger, otherwise known as the former governor of California, was in those movies. Where he's basically like robots take over the world and run humans to extinction or near the brink of extinction. So I know a lot of scientists like Elon, I don't want to say Elon, but a lot of scientists like Stephen Hawking and other people like that. It's like, hey, we don't want this to happen.
And like those are some pretty smart dudes, There's just some really, really smart people that have these big like issues with it, which is it's surprising. That surprises me, to say the least,
Yeah,
especially because there's the scientific opinion, and kind of their opinion, which I guess you could kind of lump Elon into that, even though he's very much an industrialist.
yeah,
But on the other side of that, the pure economic side is that companies are going to pursue AI technology. It's
yeah,
just going to happen as long as that is going to give them an edge in
yeah,
business. And that's, I think, I think what's going to be the make or break, because I know that China's working on an AI. Other countries are working on their own versions of AI. So it's a little bit of an AI arms race.
right.
And when do you get to that tipping point? At what point do you get to Skynet, you know? And that's
Yeah.
that's the AI that goes rogue in the Terminator movies that ends up, you know, making all the war robots kill everybody and nuclear war and
Yeah.
all that, nuclear apocalypse. At what, like, where's that thing? At what point do you get, oh, we have this AI that helps runs our systems and keeps everything extremely streamlined and can predict the future and all this stuff? When does it go from a really handy tool that's going to change our lives into now it runs everything and we have no control?
Right.
That's a fine line. That's a
Very,
very
very
fine.
fine line.
Yeah.
Yeah. And like, what was I gonna say? And like, the last thing, obviously, I think I speak for everybody, is that we rather not have a real life version of the Terminator. Just saying, I think that's a pretty safe assumption for 99% of the world.
And that 10%, man, they're something else. Anyway,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, it's kind of like having we had the space race back in the 70s, 60s and 70s to meet the Soviets. We had the nuclear arms race after World War II to 91. We had all these space races against, and when I say we, I mean the United States. So like, just to be clear, and obviously now, like how you said, we're having a scientific battle against basically China, Russia, and like a lot of other countries, and who can change the world in the shortest amount of time.
Yeah.
I think,
No kidding,
yeah, and I think it's sad for me to say this, but like I think the U.S. is starting to fall behind now, because we were a great superpower. Everyone wanted to come to us. Now it's like China, Russia, and other countries are like, "Hey, America, step aside. Us young guns are coming in," kind of thing.
Yeah, exactly. They're licking their lips, waiting to
Yeah,
just come in, you know? And I think China is in a really good position right now. They're doing trade with more. They've beaten the U.S. They are a better trade partner to the rest of the world than the U.S. is, and they're doing more business with more of the world than the U.S. is. And so they're kind of locking their place in. They're kind of locking themselves in that effect. And it's interesting. It's interesting because I know, looking on the long term, there's been a lot of ups and downs in the history of this country. It's not a perfect country, not by any stretch.
I agree.
But I think what is a dangerously insidious, it's almost a virus of a meme, is the idea that you know, our country's the best and there isn't really anything, you know, that is that sentiment that we are the best. It doesn't lead to progress. It doesn't lead to improvement, which I think is really important to keep in mind. And so I think that is something that is present, that wasn't present for some of these previous moments, some of these real previous crises of consciousness, where the US, you know, almost fell apart in the Civil War. It almost, you know, completely succumbed to all of these horrible things. But historically speaking, we pulled ourselves back up and we kept going, and we were better for it. And it's I think it's important to keep that historical perspective in mind, even though personally it feels like it's different this time. I don't know. I think it's different because, one, I'm living through it. So us actually living through history is going to be a little different. And, you know, but I don't know. It's tough because I want to believe in the US and its ability to pull itself through those kinds of historical issues. But what I'm seeing completely seems to counteract that on multiple levels. Or it just seems like we're not in a united place. We're not a United States, you know, and if we're not united, other countries that are going to be more, you know, united just by a fact of their construction. China's government is united because that's what it is.
Right.
You know,
it's kind of like what you said. Like, I feel like it's not the United States of America, it's the fractured states of America. I think it's like, it's always going to be like us against, either you're with us or you're against us. Kind of like what Anakin said.
Us against them. Yeah, it's us against them very much. and it's terrible. It's a
Yeah.
bummer right now that like that's people's opinions were like and because it shouldn't it is overlooking the real issue here, and that is I think is a real maybe not issue, but it deserves more attention, I think.
Agreed.
Kind of that the slowly growing global situation that's going on, where yeah, America's going to get knocked down a couple rungs if it hasn't already.
Yeah.
It's interesting because the Olympics are a little bit of a thermometer for that kind of thing. I know that it's very popular for a lot of not communist, but I guess communist countries, but especially like fascist countries, or just countries that have a kind of singular rule, use the Olympics to kind of flex and show the world how they're doing. It's kind of, and that's kind of also the way the U.S. treats it as well. It's kind of we're going to show off and get the most medals. I'm not sure if it's accurate, but I think that the U.S. and China were basically tied almost for medals, but I think the U.S. got like one more or something like that. So as a barometer, I think that's pretty telling. I think it's pretty telling right there that
So I just pulled it up. Like, if you look at the number of golds, the top 5 countries are 30 with 39 gold medals is the United States, which is a shocker. Number 2 is China at 38. Japan is at 27. The Great Britain is at 22, and then the ROC, which is the Russian Olympic Committee, is at 20. But if you compare that's just for gold medals. If you look at like the entire medal count, that means gold, silver, and bronze. The U.S. was, again, number 1 is the U.S. at 113 medals, total medals. And then China was at 88, and then 56, 65, and 71 for Japan, Great Britain, the ROC in that order.
Right. And, and it isn't a foolproof barometer because the Olympics have their own issues and then their own intricacies there. But I think it is telling that it was by 89 and 88. China's right there, and it's interesting because I guess nobody's really talking or doing anything about it, at least in terms of the mainstream in this country, because we've kind of tied ourselves to China, economically speaking. We're stuck. We're stuck. It happened with Apple. Apple is literally now trapped in China. They cannot do business elsewhere. It started out kind of the flip where Apple was really not quite abusing, but it was getting the most out of taking business to China. That relationship very recently, within the last couple of years, has flipped now. And now China has the leverage to strong arm Apple into doing certain things that app isn't in the company's best interests. They, can't lose the market. They can't lose the Chinese market, and they can't afford to take their factories anywhere else now. So they're stuck. They're stuck there. And it doesn't really look, that's not a very good place for an American business to be, in my opinion, to be stuck doing their business in another country. And I think that was, in my opinion, where America started to give away its power. Everyone over the last 4+5 years, there's been just a lot of hysteria pointing fingers back and forth about, what happened to this country, whether it's, radical individuals on the right side of the fence who are, looking to completely take apart the government and instate what really looks like a fascist system, to individuals on the left side who depending on who you talk to or the way the news presents it, as being like completely radical and looking to take down the systems of law and order that are in place, which is a buzzword in and of itself. But we don't need to get into that in this conversation. Because besides those issues that we've been fighting about internally, externally, I think is the real reason why this country, why America has kind of has been on the decline for the last 10 plus 15 plus years or more, and it's been taking that power and giving it to other countries. We've given it away to other countries now.
More
And
specifically to China, which obviously, if you see a country giving their power to you, regardless if you're China or Japan or France or a Madagascar, you're gonna jump on that like there's no tomorrow.
with both hands. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. Hmm. So it's interesting, nationalism aside, I think that America had a really strong run as national front leader, but honestly, what the world needs, the planet, it doesn't need one country running the helm, running the show. It needs more collaboration between countries, and it's just tough. I have my own worries, my own concerns about the potential of a Chinese superpower taking over. But I feel like if they put a little bit more thought into environmental issues and fixing the climate crisis,
Yeah.
might not be a bad thing for the planet. So it's an interesting place we're in right now.
Same thing with India, since like I know China and India are literally 1 and 2 for the world's most population, and if the 2 billion plus population countries can fix their climates, then that would obviously drop the level of holy shit level of pressure that the other countries need to make up for.
By a large amount, yeah.
Huge amount, huge.
amount, but,
I remember like
Yeah.
I was watching China Uncensored, that YouTube channel, and they posted a video, I think like at least 2 or 3 years ago, saying, hey, in like the first time in like ever, like in 20 plus years or something ridiculous, they said the people of Beijing can see the sky. I was like, holy shit.
Oh, that was recent, wasn't it? That was over COVID, right?
I think so.
It was over lockdown.
Yeah, it was over lockdown. Yeah,
Yeah.
that was last year. I'm just like, oh, holy crap. And like Beijing is, I think, like bigger than New York City population wise.
Oh yeah, it's huge. Massive. Yeah. Absolutely massive.
Huge. And it's like, if we can figure out, regardless of nationality, regardless of sexual orientation, regardless of race, if we can figure out an answer to how to fix the planet, I think that's $1 trillion idea. If not more.
At least, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, big time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's kind of a save or suck moment. It's a save or suck situation where we're approaching the 12th hour, essentially.
Literally.
Where and it's kind of a do or die kind of moment, Yeah. And I personally have faith in that, Hail Mary, like 90 yard line moment of touchdown, kind of thing. But it's kind of unfortunate that the nature of humanity is that I think it's going to have to come to a 90 yard line moment where it's going to be everything's on the line kind of a thing. And it takes, could be only by like the sheer like truth of the sense that it takes something really big to wake people up, and it's going to take bigger and bigger things for people to want to do anything about this.
Yeah, agreed. I guess what's your final thoughts on what we talked for the last hour plus?
Oh, man. Well, first off, it's been a great talk. Thanks so much, Neuron, for having me. I think that really, just to sum things up through our conversation, I really feel that the very, very unprecedented issues and challenges that we're facing right now are systematic. They're just entire systems problems that can specifically and uniquely be solved with the assistance of engineering, of science and scientists, and all those groups working together. So we need more of them. We need as many as we can get really out there doing the Lord's work, doing the good stuff, man. I'm very confident that we can get through this, that we will get through this by, being as innovative as possible and looking for the real cool solutions. I know we'll get there.
Yeah, cool. I'm on the same boat. I think we need as many engineers and as many scientists as possible moving forward. I know we all like to make fun against each other. I know we all like to make fun of the geologists. We all make fun of the engineers. We all make fun of the paleontologists, whoever. But at the end of the day, we live and breathe each other. We need each other to explain stuff that we don't understand. Like for example, for me as a mechanical engineer, I'm not going to do anything biology related unless there's a biologist with me explaining like how everything in the system works. Like obviously there are better people, more qualified than me in every industry, regardless if you're a mechanical engineer, electrical engineer, or any other engineer, or even like a biologist, a chemist, a paleontologist, whoever. But yeah, on that note, I guess we'll end it here. I guess awesome. Yeah, if you want to follow me, the Rhino, you can find me on Firehawk Archer 1 and 2 here on YouTube. You can find me on Instagram under Firehawk Archer 1. You can follow the podcast Instagram. You can follow Cool Victor 77, who is the bad. You can follow Pre Krish. I forgot his Instagram, but he's the hacker. You can follow Empower You on Instagram. Follow us on Facebook on our fan page, and anywhere else you can get audio podcasts on. Michael, where can people find you?
Excellent. I am on YouTube on a channel called Rock Talk. So if you feel like dipping your toe into the kind of more geological side of things, feel free to join me there. You can also find me at Rock Talk on Instagram and Facebook as well.
Right. Thank you everybody for listening. As always, have a good one. See you in the next episode. Peace.
What's up, guys? Just want to make this quick pre-advertisement show. Like always, Smart Stuff is our sponsor today, and you can see their ad here. Thank you, Sparso, for sponsoring this video. Much appreciated to you guys. As always, links in the description box down below. Please check them out. They do support the show, but don't worry, no added cost to you guys. They are a soap company. Shocker. And they basically help guys like me who are both martial artists and lifters to basically keep clean. Obviously, if you're a martial artist, you don't know who has what. You're sweating everywhere. Same thing with lifting too. You don't know who, like, which sweaty person touched what, and yeah, it keeps you safe. It keeps you clean, and it keeps you safe from ringworm and like other stuff that could actually be, number one, contagious. Number two, be very harmful for you and other people. So just stay safe. And like I said, it's a great soap company. I actually personally use this, so I can actually tell from experience that, hey, this is something that you should definitely check out. But as always, thank you for listening, and here is your podcast.